Welcome back to the Cheap Heat Productions podcast. Okay, welcome back to the show. And today on the show, I've got a fantastic guest, a man that you will recognize from the TV screens. There's an action figure of himself there. Nick Dinsmore, known to you guys probably that you've seen him on the screens as Eugene. How are you doing today, sir?
Fantastic. Now I just saw your intro, and I'm a little impressed that you got Bert from Judge Judy. That one got me right there. That was awesome.
That was like incredible, man, and he was really, really cool. And he actually sent me a message afterwards saying it was one of the best interviews that he's ever had.
Well, so hopefully we can duplicate it for us.
Yeah, no pressure then on this one.
No.
Yeah, so like we had Bird, like we kind of do pop culture, like, but I'm a wrestling fan, so I've talked to a good few wrestlers on the show as well.
Yeah, I saw you had Butterbean. I did a spot with Butterbean for the Juggalos for JCW.
Oh, really?
My wife thought he was going to knock me out, but I was lucky enough to duck it and give him a stunner.
You stunnered Butterbean.
Yes, he let me.
Yeah. He's a very nice guy, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I liked him in when he was in Jackass the movie as well. That was brilliant.
He's a tough guy, tough man.
Yeah, he still says, like, no matter what he does in his life, that the two things that people come up to him and say is Brawl for All and Jackass. Yeah, and the guy's done so much for boxing, you know.
Well, I mean, those two sports or genres, whatever you want to call them, have huge audience. I mean, WWE has an enormous audience all around the world.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be sitting here if it didn't.
Yeah. How did you get involved in the business initially? Because from what I read online, it wasn't something that you always wanted to do career-wise. What changed for you?
Well, no. Where did you read? Because it is what I wanted to do. Ever since I was about 7, the first time I saw Saturday Night's Main Event with Hulk Hogan and Piper and Orndorff, I mean, that exploded it for me.
So did you go straight into wrestling training then early in your life?
I was 19, yeah. I graduated high school. I played a football game, an all-star football game in Louisville, the Kentuckiana area, and I injured my knee. So I had surgery, and as I was rehabbing, I was looking into wrestling schools, and there happened to be one in Jeffersonville, Indiana, which was, at the time, it was the Nightmare Danny Davis School of Wrestling, which eventually became Ohio Valley Wrestling, and I started when I was 19.
Yeah, and I had a guy who was influential in that on the podcast the other day, Mr. Doug Basham, that you'd know well.
I've had probably some of my best matches with Doug. Probably him and Rob Conway are probably my two best opponents, and I was also partners with Rob for a long time. But Doug's phenomenal athlete. Yeah,
I'd like to get Rob on the show. I've asked him before, but he's kind of put it off. But someday I'll get to him, and we'll talk about his lovely entrance music from WWE. He'll love that.
I'll see if I can put in a good word for you.
Yeah. We'll do it the Conway, tell him.
There you go.
Yeah. In OVW, then, you were a world champion, what was it, 11 times there?
11, 15, but who's counting?
Yeah. What was it like to go and work there compared to the other independents you'd worked before there?
Well, OVW is where I started.
Okay.
I started in 96. I was training for Danny, and eventually, I can't remember at what point it became Ohio Valley Wrestling. But first, it was just the Nightmare Danny Davis School of Wrestling, and they had one show on Sundays, and that's what we worked towards. Eventually, when Danny partnered with WWE to train their talent, which I think happened in late 98, then WWE talent started coming. Cornette came back and started booking everything. Then stuff really started to explode. I did some independents, but back then we still called them outlaw promotions, know. And there was one in Central City, Kentucky for Shelby Adcock his pants would fall down when he talked to you, but he'd try to tell you how the wrestling business worked. I don't know. It was just somewhere to wrestle, but it was different then. I think so. Much different.
Yeah. When WWE became involved, then I'd imagine it wasn't just about wrestling. Were you guys learning like how to work the cameras and how to cut promos and stuff like that a lot more when WWE came in?
I mean, not a lot more. We were always told, if we're doing a TV taping, face the camera. If we're doing, just a live audience, work to the crowd. But you still have to work to the crowd if you're doing TV, so it's kind of like an intermix of both. And then Cornette came in, and then there were some days that we would do promos, but the way Cornette wrote TV a lot, he would be in the ring interviewing somebody. So if somebody got off track, he could just lead them through it. And he did that with me because I was horrible at promos. But I turned my inability to cut a strong, hard babyface promo into Eugene, who didn't have to.
Yeah. And in terms of that transition from there to the main roster, was that character your idea, or how much of that character was your idea?
Well, one of the other trainers at OVW was the hustler Rip Rogers. Rip's son has autism, and he told me, I don't know when it was, 2004-ish, 2003, late 2003, what about a character that isn't very social, has difficulty talking to the other stars, can't put a square peg in a square hole, can't tie his shoes, but the minute he gets in the ring, he can do everything that he's seen on TV flawlessly, an idiot savant type wrestler. So I pitched it to the agents would come down to OVW, and I pitched it to them. They're like, no, wrestling's gone beyond that. Arn Anderson and Fit and Dean and all of them come, no, wrestling doesn't do that kind of hokey stuff anymore. Okay. A couple months later, the writers came down. I pitched it to the writers. No, Vince wouldn't do that. So I'd seen a lot of guys complain about having to wrestle in Louisville at OVW and then get called up the next week just because the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And that's what I tell all my students, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So I told Doug Basham, I said, Doug, I think I'm going to quit and try to go to Japan. I had no connections in Japan, and I was threatening because I wasn't going to quit. I had a good job working 4 days a week in my hometown, sleeping in my own bed every night. Doug told Dean told Johnny Ace, and Johnny Ace tells Vince, and next thing I know, I'm sitting in a meeting with Vince McMahon and Stephanie. And Vince goes, I want to get back to character-based wrestling. And I hadn't put a whole lot of thought into this character. It was just what I told you, just a basic premise. And I told Vince, and he's like, oh, great, we'll start on Monday. So then I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? Steve Austin was back. It was February of 04, I believe. February of 04. And Austin had come back for something. I can't remember, maybe Saturday Night's Main Event that they taped. And Austin walks in the office, and Vince goes, Steve, have you ever seen this guy wrestle? And he looks at me and goes, no. I said, well, Nightmare Danny Davis trained me. I knew that Nightmare Danny Davis and Steve Austin had a friendship when they both wrestled in Dallas. So Austin looks at me and goes, well, he's probably one of the best then. And it was like that vote of confidence that really, pushed me over the edge. And McMahon was ready to invest in this character idea. I don't think that they thought I could get it over, because you've seen a lot of characters they'll put out there and they don't get over it, and then all of a sudden they're out 2 weeks later. Yeah. But the first time I wrestled, I wasn't on TV. I wrestled Lance Cade in St. Louis, and it was during the college Final Four basketball here, which is March Madness, going crazy. And we drew not a great house, but it was still a solid house. Nobody had ever seen Eugene. And by the end of the match, the people were chanting Eugene's name, which never happens for unknown talent. And I came back through the curtain. Triple H, Stephanie, Fit, Arn were all standing ovation. Wow. And Triple H says, you embraced the character. You did it. Because sometimes you'll see guys out there like acting a character and it doesn't come across. If you feel it and it comes out of you, then the people are going to buy it, Yeah. There's something about the outfit that just worked with the white jacket and everything. Who designed that? See, the funny thing is, it was a red jacket. Yeah. But I put my name on the back of it, and then Triple H goes, well, why don't you turn it inside out? And then people could see it's inside out. But I don't think anybody noticed it was an inside out jacket. It was just, they thought it was a white jacket. No. Yeah. But it was a red jacket, like the one back over there somewhere. Yeah, right there. There's one of them that I had. And I put my name on the back of it and turned it inside out. And then literally, I had boots and I had knee pads, but I had to borrow a pair of trunks from Rob Conway, who had he had a pair that he would give to the seamstresses to design off of, a base pair, which were just that blue pair. And then that was it. I just went out there and I tried to make it look as simple as possible, or as simple as like anybody could find at a yard sale or something, and just kind of put it together.
Yeah. That's really interesting, like to know about little things like that from the ring gear and everything as well. When you were there, how involved was Triple H when you first started in the business?
I would say he was heavily involved,
Yeah,
and then as I progressed with the company, even when I was a coach at NXT, then he was really, really immersed in that project. But yeah, he was. I mean, by that time, he was a top guy, and it was. He learned from every other great mind that came before him, and he really. They call him the game. I think it's a good moniker because he really embraced and learned the business, and he did well. He probably one of the best minds ever.
yeah. He learned from obviously a lot from Vince as well. And what's Vince like to work with? Everyone I talk to that's worked for Vince is just like he's the hardest working man I've ever seen in my life.
That is true. That is true. He is the hardest working man. I was intimidated around two people, Vince and the Undertaker. And Vince, I just because I'd grown up watching him, he was always the announcer, and then he became the boss. And I didn't really ever get a strong relationship with him, but it was good enough because he liked Eugene. And if you are a character or somebody that gets over, he wants to use you because he's all about business. He's not rude, or he's not anything derogatory. He's not like that. He's focused on his business, and I get that. You remain on top if you have that kind of mindset. When you remember when Vince slid in the Royal Rumble and blew both of his knees and had surgery?
Yeah.
So I had surgery a month prior. I was in Birmingham doing therapy, and I knew where his hospital was in Birmingham. I just walked into his into his hospital room, and he hadn't shaven in a couple of days, and you never see him with the 5 o'clock shadow. And I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm here in Birmingham. If you need anything," I knew he had somebody there to go get him something, but I just wanted to pop in there. And I wish I would have sat a chair next to his bed and talked his ear off until he told me to get out. But I was so nervous. I was like, "Hey, just want to say hi, make sure everything's okay. I'll talk to you later." Stephanie McMahon called me a couple of days later and said, "Hey, that was really nice of you. We really appreciate it. But if there's one regret I have, not a whole lot of regrets, but one of them would be, I didn't just sit a chair down and just talk his ear off, until he forced me to leave or until we became best friends."
Yeah. Lucky you didn't go in with the bedpan like Steve Austin did when he was in the hospital.
I should have fed it to him so he hit me with it.
Did you ever get intimidated going out for pay-per-views, like nervous in the surroundings like of live television, huge crowds, worldwide audience? What did you think about all that aspect to things?
I'm sure that I did, but when I recall, I don't recall that. I'm sure like the first time I was a little bit nervous, and I'm sure the first match I had I was a little bit nervous, but by that point I'd wrestled for 8 years, so I call myself a 10-year overnight success. But a lot of the guys that were trained in OVW were now on TV. Batista, Randy Orton, Rob was already on TV, so I knew all the guys in the locker room. So the locker room environment wasn't intimidating or challenging. And I've been wrestling for 8 years, and it's the same thing. It's the same size ring, or pretty much the same size ring, and it's the same, the same act, the same moves. I think it was just, I don't know. I was probably nervous about screwing up or just not doing a good job or not doing what they wanted. But when I went out, and then Eugene started to get over, and then signs started coming, and people holding signs. I bought a ticket to see Eugene, and then I knew, like, oh my gosh. And WWE gave me a little bit, and I did well, and they give you a little bit more, and they give you a little bit more, and they do that, I think, expecting people to fail. And then they can say, okay, we gave him a shot, let's release him and try somebody else. And it didn't happen. I went from like a bumbling, comedy Eugene to all of a sudden I'm in the main event at SummerSlam with Triple H. It was like a rocket, and it was surreal.
Yeah, like that match with Triple H, he was really vicious.
Well, it was tough because we were in Toronto, and the fans turned on Eugene. It was the first time the fans hated Eugene, cheering Triple H, and I'm following him, and he wants to have Triple H match, which is fine, but I think it could have been better. I don't know. But
the fans would always get sick of any character, really. Like you see with Roman Reigns, like for example, he was like absolutely hated for years. Mm-hmm. Now he's the bad guy. Now everyone loves him, but like still boos him. But like he's so over, like Roman at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's done well for himself.
Would you ever think of going, if you were to go back under a different character or a much darker kind of version of Eugene? What would you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, people ask me, would you ever go back? Well, of course I would. I mean, I think people gripe, and you're going to gripe about any job you have, but they've given me a platform. They've given me a career. It's been phenomenal. I would do any character that, that they would present before me. I don't know.
Yeah. Is it true that you played Doink the Clown a few times?
Twice. I was the 6th Doink the Clown. And I think Doink the Clown should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. This is a classic character. It's been on TV for over 20 years, instantly recognizable, and the people love him. The best part about having your own action figure? You get to play with yourself in public.
I totally agree with you about Doink going in and playing with yourself in public, for that matter. What was your favorite match in WWE? Was it the one with Triple H at SummerSlam because of the occasion, or was it a different one?
I don't know. I had a lot of good matches. Triple H at SummerSlam. I had Kurt Angle the next SummerSlam. I was in the ring with Hogan at WrestleMania. I was in the ring with The Rock. The Rocks would set me over the top. That whatever it was, 15, 17-minute segment we did on TV, that propelled me to a top guy. So, and that's something like, I came to TV that day. We were in San Diego, and Sylvain Grenier was friends with Pat Patterson, and I think Pat told him, if Sylvain comes to me early in the day, that they've got something good for you today. They're going to bring in either The Rock or they're going to use Rhino. And no disrespect to Rhino, but he's no Rock. And I'm sitting there thinking, The Rock's not going to come today. It's going to be Rhino, and it'll be good. It'll be fine. But, The Rock will be awesome, but he won't be here. Lo and behold, he shows up. And I was on like 6 segments out of 13 on Raw. So I'm running around doing all these different segments and doing all these walkthroughs. And I go back and I walk through I had one line in that whole thing he did. And every time backstage we'd work on it, I'd miss it. I kept screwing up. I'm like, I'm going to screw this up. He was so awesome. He's cutting that promo out there. He just puts the mic kind of by his hip and he's walking around me. He goes, your line's next. And just fed the mic to me. And it was boom right there. And it was that line, that moment that made Eugene over the top.
Yeah, I'd say it was amazing kind of work with someone like him, considering like, look at him now. Look at this guy like that. We kind of grew up watching.
He hadn't been on TV in like 2 years. Nobody expected him to be there. And he didn't have to do it. He was doing it to get back to the business. And it made me a star. And that's, I'm forever thankful to him.
Yeah, it looks like he might be coming back for Mania next year, what I'm hearing anyway, but we'll see him and Roman.
Well, he came back to WrestleCena, and they drew like the biggest gate of all time, I think, didn't they?
Yeah. That says it all. One guy you worked on screen with a lot that I enjoy watching his promos, I enjoy watching his matches, is William Regal. What was he like to work with?
Oh, he's great. So I told you I was trained by Rip, and Rip and Regal wrestled in Germany together, and it was actually Rip that got Regal to come to America. He's the one that got him into WCW. So we had kind of a common friend, and then I started riding with him. It was when I first started, I rode with Regal and Tajiri, and it was like Barnum and Bailey Circus on Wheels. I mean, it was hilarious, but it gave me time to really sit there and pick his brain and talk about stuff and ask questions. And I mean, he was like, a mentor, a brother figure, a father figure. So it was great. It was great to have it. And it helped me because what I lacked speaking or just business-wise, he was right there to say, okay, do this. He was the one that told me, oh, yeah, put your arms out and act like you're flying like a plane. Okay. And he was just trying to reel me in. He'd go, do it, roll forward and keep doing it. And just he was the one that, if it wasn't for Regal, Eugene wouldn't have got over. It was that odd couple pairing, and I think his credibility, and also being Eric Bischoff's nephew, gave Eugene some kind of credibility. I think it was a knock on Bischoff to have Eugene as the nephew, but it worked out.
Yeah, you spent a bit of time over here in Ireland before wrestling for Irish Whip Wrestling as well, and there was a couple of other guys I was talking to recently, like Doug was over here as well, and Rene Dupree. Did you enjoy your time here in Ireland, and did you get to drink much beer?
No, yes on both. Yes. Yeah. It was awesome. And the crowds over there are phenomenal, and they've just got such energy, no matter what size it is. One of the first tours with WWE I did, we came to Ireland, and it was, oh my gosh, it was awesome.
I was probably there. Yeah, I used to go all the time, but now I think I maybe missed 2 out of the last 6 years was all, but I enjoy it because it's rare over here. Maybe we get it 1 time a year, maybe 2 times a year, and that's it.
Yeah, I remember we went over there and they had Fit do something in the ring, and at least the first time I'd seen him in a WWE ring, he was still just an agent. He hadn't started wrestling, and it was like
Yes.
people just went bananas for him.
I think he was here with Hornswoggle as well at some point. Yeah.
That was good. That was good. That was a good combo.
Yeah. Midwest All Pro Wrestling. Talk to me about it. Talk to me about it. What you do, what your role is there, how it's going for you.
So I met my wife in 2004 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We lived in various other cities, but in 2015 we moved back to Sioux Falls, and she said, you know, there's no independent wrestling in Sioux Falls, and I'm like, there probably is, you just don't know about it, but there wasn't. The nearest independent company is like 3 hours south in Omaha, and growing up in OVW, I saw that business model that Danny Davis created, and I knew I could replicate it, and I wanted to because that's all I've known. So we started Midwest All Pro Wrestling here in 2015. We'll have our 6-year anniversary in November, and you know, I just had JTG in, I just had Carlito in. You know, we've been running 2 monthly shows every month for a couple years now, trying to build some stars, trying to build a territory. You know, I want to be able to tour the Midwest, and it's something that, much like Ireland, that South Dakota didn't have, because it's a huge state, a lot of land, and not really populated. I think there's 180,000 people in the city, and maybe 800,000 people in the whole state. You know, I think there's more cattle in this state than there are people, but I want to take pro wrestling entertainment, you know, family-friendly entertainment around the Midwest.
It seems like, for me, looking on the outside when I'm talking to people from different parts of America, that there's a big rejuvenation of independent wrestling happening right now, with streaming services, with like different shows that people want to go to. Like, what's it like being there at the moment? Are you excited about what the future might bring?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm running my own shows, but then I'm also getting booked. So there's some nights that Eugene will get booked and I got to take a flight somewhere else, but then my crew is going to run the show in Sioux Falls. And you're right. Like, I think independent wrestling, much like WWE, has cycles, and it goes up and it goes down. And it might have been down for a little bit, but it's definitely coming back strong. There's a huge with AEW now battling, and Impact still in the mix there. I mean, you know, it's definitely an upswing right now, and I think that helps everybody.
Yeah, I think it kind of lost a bit over the last few years when WWE were kind of going around just buying talent basically and just taking guys. But I think with AEW and TNA and stuff like that, it helps. You need that bit of competition just to show that there is other options out there for people, I think.
I think after the Benoit incident, a lot of wrestling went down, you know, all of it.
Yeah.
And it's slowly creeping back now, and now people are, you know, not forgetting, but looking at the new products and enjoying it.
Do you think that really had that long-term effect over there? It was a massive news story. Like, it was even over here, like wrestling would be never in the news in Ireland. But like, I suppose like it was primetime America when it happened for weeks and weeks.
He was a worldwide star that a tragedy befell. I understand that WWE wants to cut off, you know, everything and not remember him, but I think we have to, because he wrestled so hard, and I think he wrestled so vicious that his brain went to mush, and that's why that happened, in my opinion. And I think we have to look at that and go, okay, I don't want to end up that way. I don't want anybody else to end up that way. So we have to look at this case study and say, you know, that was a horrible tragedy. I don't want to wish that on anybody. Let's try to make sure nobody else has that, as opposed to let's just put a black curtain on it and forget it.
Yeah. What was Chris like to work with?
So when I was in OVW, Benoit came down, and I wrestled in the Louisville Gardens 20 minutes toe-to-toe with Benoit a little bit after he jumped to WWE. So it was like, you know, a worldwide star, and all of a sudden I went, you know, right with him for 20 minutes, and that's what made me a super-duper star in Louisville. Mm-hmm. And he was, you know, he was hard-working, and he was, you know, I enjoyed him. He was a mentor. I looked up to him. He was an idol, but you're only as good as your last performance, and his last performance was horrendous. So I hate that happened.
Yeah. He was at the very first WWE live show I went to in Dublin. It was the time that he was world champion, and him and Triple H were in the main event. And I always remember afterwards, because it was my first show, he got on the microphone and he said, "Thanks for coming out tonight. Let's all go have a pint of Guinness." And everyone cheered him out of the building. And it was like, he was really, really on top then. And it's just, Unbelievable what followed that, but we're not gonna go down that road tonight. We're gonna try to keep things positive. And before we finish up, I've got a question for you.
Yep.
If you were stranded on a desert island and you needed to pick 3 wrestlers to accompany you to survive, who would they be and why?
To survive.
Mm-hmm.
Who is most resourceful? I don't know. Most wrestlers are not very resourceful. Some are. I don't know. I would probably pick Regal just because I want to hear the stories, and I'd probably pick Fit because I think Fit would be resourceful. He's a tough son of a gun.
Yeah.
But then you need one guy to go do all the dirty work. So maybe Harvey Whippleman, downtown Bruno, to go run all the stuff for me.
Yeah, most people would throw in a girl as their third one, or a woman. And I think, who did I have on? Oh, was it Doug the other day? I think it was Doug. Yeah, and he said Renee Paquette because she's a cook. She can cook good stuff.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
fair enough. Yeah. Listen, man, it was great to catch up with you today. Like, I really appreciate it, and I wish you the best of luck with the school. And you never know, we might see you on the big screen soon. Never say never.
Never say never. Have everybody check out Midwest All Pro Wrestling. We got it on Twitter. We got it on Facebook. My personal favorite is our YouTube channel. And then I've got the Nick Dinsmore YouTube channel that I put a lot of my old matches on. Not that I own them, but I put them on there. And then my Twitter is at Eugene Dinsmore. So everybody, follow, give me a like, share me, and hopefully I'll see everybody in Ireland soon.
Yep, I'll put them all in the bio for this video anyway, man. Thanks a million.
Thank you. All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.